Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brandon the Dom, and today we're talking about 7 behaviors for a good dominant. Now, when I'm discussing behaviors, I'm moving beyond consent and moving beyond, doing research about what kinks you're going to get into and the processes for doing that. And the reason being is because I think somebody that wants to engage in BDSM should be doing that by default. In the scene, we have terms for that called top and bottom. The top is the one doing the act to somebody. The bottom is the one receiving the act. And I think both sides of those coins have to educate themselves about BDSM so that they're doing it in a safe, sane, and consensual way. However, dominance and submission are a little different. You can think about it like cooking. You can make chicken breasts and you can boil chicken breasts like a bodybuilder, and it can be pretty bland, but technically you're getting all the nutrition. That's what I think being a top and bottom would be about. However, dominance and submission are kind of like adding spices to that, making a culinary experience for what you're about to eat. Dominance and submission is the intention behind whatever act you're doing as a top or bottom. So today, as we're thinking about the behaviors of a good dominant, really think about these as mindsets or the intentions behind the actions. I'm going to scroll through the article that I had written on my website so that you can see what I'm talking about. However, you can go and read this article in further depth to get a little more explanation about each one of these behaviors. So you can see the first one is leadership. I think this is the core of being a dominant. And when I speak of leadership, I mean it sort of in the captain and first mate dynamic, where the captain of the ship knows exactly what's going on in the entire ship. He's spoken to all of his crew members. He knows the vision for where he's going, but he also knows the goals of all the members on the ship. And all the members on the ship are trusting the captain to get them there. They know that the captain has the skills and has the interests of each one of the crewmen at the heart of the captain. I think dominance and submission are the same way. A submissive is giving over their power because they believe the dominant actually has their best interests in mind. And it's the dominant's job to kind of create a vision for where they're going. Now, if you're in like a full 100% DS dynamic, that could be your entire life together. The dominant is taking the vision for where you're headed in life and as a couple. But it could be as simple as in the scene, what is the goal of the dominant? What's the goal of the submissive? And how can we structure that to get there? And just like any good leader, if the dom is only serving what he wants, then he becomes a tyrant, in which some cases that could be fun, but I don't think for the entire relationship, at least that's not how I run mine. And if they're only serving the submissive and the goals of the submissive, well, then they're kind of like a coin-operated top. They're doing everything that the submissive wants, but never checking in with their own goals. So even though we've had the power exchange and the dom has all the power, I think the desires of each one is taken into account. Basically, the dom is being the leader, getting each person on a team. And I really think there's 3 core parts that are important for leadership. So that's creating a vision. Where are we headed? What's the goal? That's bringing people together on a team in order to execute on that vision. And then bringing resources together to execute on that vision. Now, it's a very business sense, but if you break it down into a DS dynamic, they're creating a vision for what the scene's going to be like, what's the relationship going to be like, what are our goals as you and I are on a team, and then bringing together that team, obviously you and that other person that's in the dynamic, but sometimes it's more people, depending on what your scene may be, and then any of the resources that you actually need in order to fulfill that goal. Those could be toys, that could be the setting, it could be whatever you need to actually prepare to actually execute that scene. So that's leadership. The next is responsibility. Obviously, the Spider-Man line comes to mind here. With great power comes great responsibility. The only reason that the submissive is giving over power is because they believe that you're going to take responsibility for them. You're going to care for them. You're going to help them reach their goals. And hopefully you're going to give them a pretty freaking good time. The other reason that this is important is it begins to create trust. And that's the only time that the submissive actually gets to sink into that submissive mindset, that they can let go of the worry and thinking about themselves and having to worry about what's going on because they know somebody else is responsible for that. That's really one of the gifts that the dominant gives the submissive. All right, behavior number 3 is creating order or creating structure. When we're role-playing with dominance and submission, we're kind of creating this container to allow this world to happen. Not always something that we get to do out in the real world. So we kind of have to create boundaries, rules, and structures around that so that we can have the most fun. It's sort of like letting kids play out at a park or at some playground. There's a fence, a structure, an area where you're allowed to play. And within that, you can do whatever you want or, whatever you've agreed upon. It's the same thing in the DS dynamic. We create certain rules and boundaries where we can actually have that play. But dominance also gives submissives another gift in this structure. A lot of times, the submissive has some sort of goal, and the dominant creates structures, behaviors, rules, and things to help them reach that goal. Now, these can be goals that are very, self-development focused, such as the classic drinking more water, or it could be anything from losing weight, trying to get a promotion at a job, whatever the submissive needs the dominant's help in doing. The dominant can lay out certain behaviors that he wants the submissive to do in order to reach that goal. However, this could be a sexual thing as well. For example, if the submissive wants to experience some sort of orgasm, the dominant can give the submissive certain things to do in order to help her learn more about her own pleasure and different tasks that help her get closer to that orgasm. All right, the next one is communication. This is the one that you're going to hear all the time. Communication is the bread and butter of these DS dynamics. Honestly, they're the bread and butter of a good, healthy relationship. And the reason that communication is important is it creates clarity. I am not in your head. You're not in my head. We can't read each other's minds yet. Maybe when Elon Musk gets done with Neuralink, we can just connect those and transmit stuff, and we never have to have the hard, dirty conversations. However, those are the most fun, so I don't know why we'd want to get rid of them. But communication is about creating clarity. Clarity in what we want and clarity in what we don't want. We want to be able to speak about our desires and to be able to share our boundaries. Now, as the dominant, you're creating some sort of structure to allow that to happen. Oftentimes, you're the one that needs to go first to be a little more vulnerable about your desires, but you're also modeling what it means to share your desires and to share your boundaries so that it's easier for your submissive to do so. You're also trying to show what it means to actively listen to the other person and to actually hear what they wanted, to start to ask questions, to gain more clarity. Because oftentimes, a submissive, being a submissive person, wants to please their dom. And so they might try and say something that pleases their dom, even though they might not actually want to do it. Or vice versa, that is something they really want to do, but they know their dom's not really into it, so they never bring it up. As the dominant, it's our job to basically create a safe container with zero judgment to allow those things to flow out. And by creating this foundation of communication, when things get hard in the future, because they most inevitably will, it's easier for each person to actually have that conversation because they've done it a million times within this container. I also think it's important for the dom to be seeking feedback from the submissive about the relationship, about how a scene went, even just little things, in order for them to get better. So opening up that communication line is an important aspect of actually getting that feedback when you need it. All right, the next one is awareness. And this is not one that you're actually going to see a whole lot in people describing, what a good dominant is or what the good behaviors or traits or mindsets of a good dominant are. And awareness is actually something that I bring from Tantra into practicing dominance. And the reason I think it's important for a dominant to be aware not only of themselves, but of their submissive is because they can actually understand more about how the submissive is receiving some of the dominant acts. The example I use here in this article is, say you're doing impact play and you're swatting your submissive away. They're enjoying it. And then you do a swat and they start flinching a little bit. And you go do another swat and you see their body even reacting a little more than it normally is. If you're not aware of the situation, you might miss those and you might be going over the line that your submissive can handle or maybe even a boundary that your submissive has, but your submissive has not spoken up about it. However, if you're aware, you can read the body language and see that maybe you need to back off. Awareness is not only good in that situation, but also when you're having sex. You're out of your head and you're actually present with the moment, present with yourself and the pleasure that you're having, and present with your sub and the pleasure that they're having. And the more that you can do that, the more you're going to enjoy the experience, the longer it's going to last, and the less you're going to be worried about a whole bunch of other crap that doesn't matter. Right, the next one is educating and creating growth for you and your submissive. Now, not every dominant takes on the teacher or mentor or educator role, but I often do. In my vanilla life, I'm an educator, and it's just not something that gets turned off. And it's something that I thoroughly enjoy in a dynamic, is showing my submissive something new or helping them grow in some way. I always like to leave people better off than I found them. And so educating is one way to do that. And this could be as simple as showing them new techniques, showing them new kinks, showing them a way to do something. But it could also be educating that person about themselves, helping them gain more self-awareness, helping them understand what their likes and dislikes are, where their boundaries are. I also like helping my submissive to experiment, kind of push the boundaries for them so that they can grow as a person. Not pushing their boundaries to something that they don't want to do, but helping them to develop themselves. I spend a lot of time learning about myself, educating myself. So I like to pass that along, but I also expect it of my submissives. That's something that I want in my dynamics. Right. The last one is love, or creating the intention. And a lot of times in BDSM, you're going to hear what's the difference between abuse and BDSM play, and it's consent. I also think love should be in there as well. When you're committing one of these acts, when you're doing something in BDSM, are you doing it because you love the person, or are you doing it for some other reason? Even, a heavy spank could be done with love behind it. You're doing it because you care about that person. You're doing it because you know it's going to bring them pleasure. You're doing it because you know it's part of their goals. Something along those lines. You love that person to some degree. And I don't mean you have to be an entirely romantic love. It could be you just, really care for that person. So I believe any acts that you're doing in BDSM should be out of love, not out of hate or to hurt that person, unless they want to be hurt and that's their goal. And again, then you're doing it out of love and you just want to give them a really good time. Now, the last comment I want to make about these is these are very idealistic. They are mindsets and ideals that we're trying to aim for in being a good dominant. However, I fall short of these all the time. Other people fall short, but it's good to know what we're aiming at. Remember, going back to that leadership aspect, creating a vision. Where are we going? This is where we're trying to go as a dominant, the things that we're trying to do. And if we mess up along the way, well, then we take note of that, we repair any of the damage, and we move forward trying to be a better person. So those are the 7 behaviors of a good dominant, or at least the way I like to practice dominance. In a future video, I'm going to do the flip side of what is a good submissive and the 7 behaviors that go along with those and coincide with the behaviors that we just went over. However, if you want to skip ahead and educate yourself, you can go to the website, read the article on a good submissive, and I'll be doing the video later. Also, if creating a DS dynamic inside of your relationship is something that you want to do, and you've never done it before, I know it can be a little scary to bring up these topics, to communicate it with your partner about your desires. This is something that I actually help with. I do one-on-one or one-on-2 coaching, and you can find that on my website under the coaching tab as well. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll see you in the next video.